I'll just open it up. Today on the journey, we're going to Wisconsin, and we're going to get some feedback and some instruction and some advice from a professional dog trainer. So we're going to have Jeremy Moore on today, and if you follow Jeremy on social media, mainly Instagram, it's going to be Dogbone Hunter. And Jeremy does a wide variety of training with dogs. He does shed hunting, which we are definitely going to get into today. He does blood tracking for wounded game. And he's also doing the retrievers and the pointers, which I think is so interesting. So we're just going to sit down and have a conversation and see what we can learn from his expertise. Jeremy, how's everything up in Wisconsin this morning?
Really good, Heath. I appreciate you for having me on. We're in a heat spell here, so it's a little awkward, but we're going to cool off. We're going through a couple hot days, but makes it hard for training stuff. But we were talking earlier, I see the light at the end of the tunnel here with summer. So fall's not too far off, and we're seeing that a little bit.
Yeah. I just come off the river. When I got up this morning before daylight, it was 70 degrees out, and I'm like, man, that's awful. So I went to the river, tried to get in a couple hours. I did end up catching a muskie this morning. I hooked one. Yeah, I hooked one. He got off before I got him to the boat. I got kind of discouraged and went on down the river, and then I come back to a little spot that I know there's a pretty good concentration, and I ended up catching another, like a 30-inch, 32-inch one. But when I come off the river at 9:30ish, I mean, I was drenched. Drenched from the humidity. I don't know if you guys have that up there, but
not usually, which is kind of a blessing. But we get these warm stretches, and we had one come through here this week, and it gets so damn hot, and then all of a sudden it's kind of volatile, and we get a thunderstorm. All of a sudden it'll pop up, and because of the moisture, now we got a little bit of heat too. So it's like a sauna around here, man. It's hot.
So tell us a little bit about you. What you do. I know, like I said, you do several disciplines with the dogs. Just give us your background and tell us, what Dogbone Hunter is about.
Yeah. Well, it's so myself. I'm into Labrador Retrievers. I got my first one it would be 2000 is when I got my first lab. My family has a background with some dogs, but not until later in my years. And we had golden retrievers. My mom actually had a very small kennel, and she'd raise maybe a litter every other year. And so the retriever stuff was always kind of the beginning of my working with dogs. I bought that lab when I was in college. I was actually a sophomore, and I had some buddies that were from Minnesota. Big waterfowl guys, and the lab was the dog to get at that point for me. And so I got a black lab, and from there I fell in love with that breed. And I went from, and that was an American bred dog, and she was fantastic. She was really she was very close, like style wise. She was really close to the dogs that I'm kind of into these days, and started kind of in 2003. I bought a puppy that was out of British bred lines, field lines. And it fits my training style a lot better, and it fits my lifestyle a lot better, and it fits my hunting style a lot better, and personally. And so it's very much a preference thing. And that the Labrador has been something that I've really fell for, and then kind of just kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper into. And for many, many years, I've worked with a variety of different folks across the country with different lines, genetics, and breedings. And probably I say it's been, I'm training 2 puppies right now that are out of our breeding. And I finally decided to look at it a little bit. I think it's like, this would be out of somehow connected to us. It'd be like our fourth generation. So I haven't been breeding very long, but I have really paid close attention to genetics to get to this point where I felt comfortable, and I actually felt like it was a good point where I was going to be able to get the dog that fit me the best by doing it myself. And so, but it took me a long time. It took me probably 20 years to get get that, where I feel pretty confident with that now. It took about 15 years probably to figure out what it was that I really liked. And so it just took me a while. And the Labradors have been my focus. I think, there's a term out there, versatile dogs, and some people get offended by me saying this, but like, I really feel like if you look at the definition of the word versatility, boy, there should be a picture of a lab next to it, because I can do anything with them. And I think you can see that in society. Like, you see them all over doing, and that there's a lot of dogs that could fit that. There's a lot of dogs that could be next to the word versatile. There's the term versatile dogs, and we all kind of associate that with a lot of the German style dogs, and I get it. They have a group, the NAVHDA group and all that stuff. But so I don't mean to ruffle feathers with that. I just mean that my labs allowed me to do what I wanted to do, which was, like you mentioned in the beginning, I was raised a hunter and in a hunting family, and it consumes me, and it's really what I love in life. So to have a dog that I could do a lot of that stuff with just made sense. You mentioned the pointer. I had not trained a pointing breed up until recently, and I've got a little English setter puppy now. She's going to be 2 in November, and I'm having a blast with her. Like, she's a personal dog of mine, and I've gotten back to some of my roots that I hadn't really done. From an upland standpoint, hunting ruffed grouse, or we call them partridge here, but I didn't do it for quite a while. And I've kind of gotten back into it more recently, and with that brought on this idea of, well, I'd really like to have a bird dog. And so I bought a setter, and I'm learning a lot. I'm learning an awful lot from her. And I think that in the end, I think she's going to be a real nice dog. I similar to the Labradors, I feel like I started with a dog that has really, really strong genetic traits. She's a dog out of a kennel called Northwoods Bird Dogs. Jerry Coulter and Betsy are the breeders, and it doesn't take long to find out who they are in this little world, and they've got really nice dogs. And so I finally got one from them, and she's going to make me a better retriever trainer. She'll make me a better pointing dog trainer, that's for sure. I'm learning an awful lot from her, and I'll have more, and I'll probably get a lot. I hope I'll improve as time goes on, the more dogs I work like that. But she's going to make me a better retriever trainer. She'll make me a better dog trainer in general. And you had mentioned, I don't know if you're referring to, we do these workshops. We do some training workshops where people will bring dogs in. So we do I think this is our 13th year of doing it. So I see quite a few different dogs come from all across the country, and they're always different styles and breeds and genetics for sure. And that helps me. Like, those workshops help people. I think that's the point of it, is to train the trainers more than anything. But those workshops really help me, because I get to see such a variety. I get to see dogs that have some issues that my dogs will never have. Mm-hmm. So as a trainer, I think you got to figure out how to work through some of that stuff. And if you don't expose yourself to it, I don't think you push yourself very, very as far as you probably can when it comes to improvement. And so I've got a good friend of mine that he's a real good trainer, and I did some breeding recently with him, and he spent a couple of years in the UK, and he trained with some of the best in the world, and he worked with some of the best dogs, and he got such an education doing that. But we have conversations about some of the dogs that he's working with right now and having some struggles with. And I said, it's the best thing for you, because if all you'd ever do is work the best dogs, man, you'll only get so good. And so I feel like I get my experience. I don't want to do that myself personally with my own dogs necessarily, but I get a lot of that with opportunities like workshops. But now I'm to the point where I'm old enough, and I'm a big believer in the idea of make it as easy as possible. And I think that simplification is kind of the key to that when it comes to my training. And then when you pair that up with the right dogs, things go pretty well, pretty smoothly.
Yeah. And I've got like 5 questions out of that statement that you were making. So first, I want to go back to genetics and going back to, you said it took about 15 years to figure out what you wanted, and now, so and breeding for us is a big thing. We really talk about, breeding best to best, or, genetics that should complement each other instead of just breeding, your buddies down the road's dog because he has a dog and you have a dog. That's not what we're after. We're to build or create a better, stronger hound, and you're doing it with your labs. So what are some things that you took, or what are some things that you used to make that decision, and what swayed you in that decision?
I think what swayed me into it was the pain in the ass it was to work with dogs that weren't the right fit. It just made it so much harder. Yeah. And I thought, why is there's such a variation? And when I realized how important the dog itself was, it became very clear to me. Well, there's certain things that match and align with me better. And because I will be the first person to say it. I'm not I think about it an awful lot and I act on it, but I'm not a breed snob. Like, I'm not like, the good dog's this is a good dog, that's a bad dog. No, they're all good. It just depends on who they're with. And so there are certain dogs out there that I have friends that prefer different styles of Labradors, and they're the same breed. They're very close in so many ways, but there's certain dogs that they would see that they would that's exactly what they want. It's absolutely not what I would want. So for me, it was training enough of them over the years that weren't what I liked, and then realizing how much more work it was and how much I didn't enjoy it, because I don't like going out and battling with the dog. I'm not there to fight with them. So when you start, so then that started me on this idea of, well, you better make a list of what you like. Cause I literally have a list that I have it in my phone. I add to it. It changes as the years go on. It's changed a bit. But I have these traits and things that I like. And so I started building that out in my mind of, well, what is good for me, and what are the things that I like? And then I start figuring out, well, who's got that, and how can I work towards that? And what's the close to me? One of the biggest things was figuring out where's the closest thing to it to start, because I just I think it takes so long. It takes so many generations to get significant changes with consistency. I think what can happen is what I don't, and this is all opinion, like some people will listen to this and agree, some people will say you're nuts, but I feel like when you take a dog that isn't close to what you want in the end, it's going to take an awful lot to help get what it gives you as a starting foundation or base to get where you want to be. So I wanted to start as close as I could. So that meant try a whole bunch of them. And I do believe in, this is interesting because I don't talk about this much publicly. Talk about it a lot privately with friends of mine and stuff. But I think it's something that's really interesting. And I ask a lot of questions about it because there's so many people that I talk with that'll talk about it with me, but they won't talk about it on the record. It's always this is off the record stuff. And I'm not an off the record type guy in most situations. So we like the idea of line breeding. I talk about with so many people, and I just can't get people to be openly honest about it. Like, I write for Gundog magazine. And so one of my goals is actually, I'm thinking about I've been thinking about it for a while now, about putting together an article about it. But how do I do it where I'm not going to necessarily piss off a lot of people, but I want to be honest. I'm not going to fluff it. I'm not going to beat around bushes. So as the years go on, I could keep collecting ideas and putting them into notes, and eventually I'll write the article. But I feel like with line breeding stuff, I'm a big believer in it. Like, I've yet to find a dog that I really, really liked that wasn't pretty closely line bred. But I think that the thing about it is it's so challenging, because the way it magnifies traits or can magnify traits, you have to be so particular and you have to be so picky. And if you got dogs with chinks in the armor, which they all do, none of them are perfect. I feel like if you're not careful, you can just as easily magnify the negative or undesirable as you can what it is that you're after. So I've got dogs right now that I'm really liking. They're line bred and they're relatively close. I feel like there's a fine line, no question about it. But I'm a believer in this idea of breeding dogs is such an art. Like there's science to it, and we can beat the hell out of the science. Like there's computer programs and there's all these things that we can do now. But man, is it a gut feel thing? And is it an art thing? And is it making the right choices with what puppies you do or don't keep? So to me, it's a whole new thing separate from training. But I think the two connect together so closely. Like if you look at dogs in general, for me, I look at it like if I were to look at it like a chain, which I look at training like a chain, a lot of links that get connected together. And so, you got to build the links first. You can't just get a chain. So you build these links and then you connect them together. And if you're missing links, it doesn't do you much good. That doesn't work. And if you got weak links, you got all these issues. So I feel like dog training in general, or dogs in general, is kind of this combination and this dance between the dog itself and then the handler. And I think it's missed a lot is the importance of how those two things kind of mesh together. And it all can be, you can break it down into so many different things. And to me, that's really what I'm after right now. Is I didn't pay as close of attention to the makeup of the dog itself and how it got to be what it was. And that's like maybe the last 5 years I probably dove into that a little bit more and I'm trying my own thing to figure out, is that what I like? And so far I've been really happy. I have can honestly say I feel like in the last decade for sure, and maybe closer to the second half of the decade, have had the best dogs I've ever had. And they're just really consistent and they're really easy. And that's one of the things that I have made a point of putting on my list of things that I like in dogs is easy ones, because easy ones make it really enjoyable. And they eliminate a lot of the things that create hard feelings with the dog. And I get so many people, I talk to so many people that are so frustrated with their dogs. I mean, they're almost to the point of panic. They're almost to the point of giving up. You can just sense it in the person. So I look at it and I go, man, you got to get right yourself before you can get right with your dog. Because every time you go with your dog, you don't like them. Well, the dog knows it. The dog reads you better than you'll ever read it. So you better start to like. I'm a big believer in the idea of you better like your dog. If you really want to have a nice one, you're gonna have to like it. So I do think it's important. Simple stuff like picking out the right color. I don't give a shit what color dog it is. A good one's a good one. But if you don't like the color, you're not going to like the dog. So like I have some people tell me it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know some kennels that pick dogs for people. And I have no problem with it. Do it however you want. But my belief is that person's going to want it. I want that. If that person's going to succeed with the dog, they got to want that dog. That's the one that they want. So like I don't want someone picking a puppy for me. I don't care what litter it is, because they're not all the same. And I want to know which one. I want to love the one I got before I ever got it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a bigger picture, thing with it. So I probably went a million different directions.
No. Like I got more questions. So the first thing I want to tell a quick story on the color, because I'm like you. I don't care about the color if it's a good dog. I don't care. For me and what I do in my world, I'm not partial to a solid white dog, because the bear tend to pick them out and run them down. And I've had dogs that are in that category, and I mean, they're always getting beat up, or they get chased so much that they'll hang back and they're not doing completely what they should do. But so I got a pup out here that she's getting ready to turn 6 months old. So my buddy sends me like pictures, pup 1, pup 2, pup 3, pup 4. And he said, just pick one out. So I scroll through there and I'm looking and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to get to go watch them. I don't get to go look at them and put my hands on them. So, by golly, if I'm going to pick one out, I'm going to pick one out that's pretty and that I could look at.
Sure. For sure, man. Yeah, why not, right?
That's what I did. I picked the one out that I liked the way that it looked, and I got her, and I love her. Like, I love her. But you're right. You have to like the, and I've got rid of so many dogs because I just did not like them.
Yeah, which is fine. There's a dog I train. I just bred her. She's the mom of the litter of the pups I'm training right now, and I fell in love with her like right from the start. I really really liked her. I wrote a column for a whole column one year on her for Gun Dog, and I wrote a feature for her about her the following year on her first hunt. And she was beautiful. She was a beautiful dog. She was from a dog that I wanted to get this dog out of, which is just a really, really solid sire out of England. And so I really loved her from the beginning, loved everything about her. And I was messaging with the guy who owns the sire. It wasn't the breeder of this litter, but he's in England. And so I was messaging back and forth with him about this puppy. And I'm trying to learn more about that sire. And that was why I got this dog, because I wanted to train a puppy out of it. So I ended up buying breedings out of that sire because of this. But anyway, this dog, I just was having so much luck with. She was doing great. And so I've been back and forth with him via email. And one day he said to me in email, he said, you know why you're having such a good time? You know why you're getting such good results? And he question mark, and he sent it to me. Well, I got it the next day because we're off on times or whatever. And so I messaged him back thinking, boy, he's really going to give me some insight here. So I'm on pins and needles waiting to hear the answer. So I said, no, but I really want to hear. And his answer was, because you're having a really good time. You're having a lot of fun. I can tell. That was it. And I'm going. So I sat there and I thought, that son of a bitch is right. Like, I'm having a blast with this dog. I can't tell you how much I enjoy it. Well, why do you think we're doing so well? The dog reads me, like I said. So every time I take the pup out, I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm just feeding off of her. And so what did she do? She fed off of me. And so now there's more to it than that. But that was a big part of it that I don't know that I ever would have played that as part of the equation. Well, you're having a hell of a good time with her. No wonder you're doing well. Boy, that's pretty simple. So I do think it's important, and that's the simple stuff that gets overlooked because we want to get really complicated on everything, and that's where at times I'm all for digging deep. I'm all for the layers because I think that's how you do really take it to the next level with anything in life. But I also think you can't lose sight of the simple stuff. And I think we have a tendency to do that.
Yeah. Which that leads me, I'm going to go back one question on you. So do you think, because I've asked myself this question a lot, like when I first got into hounds back in, 20 years old, like I didn't know anything. There's been dogs around me my whole life. My dad actually, at one point in my childhood, we raised Great Danes, and then he went from Great Danes to labs. We had labs for probably 20 years. And the last lab that Dad had died probably 10 years ago. And now he messed with blue healers and red healers. And now he's running a mountain collie. But anyway, so I didn't know anything about training dogs. It was monkey see, monkey do. And it resonated with me what you said about your friend. Like, I got so frustrated. I got so aggravated and handled dogs probably the way that I shouldn't have handled because I didn't know anything. And then when I got into the law enforcement training side of it, or handling, let's go to handling first because that's what came first. And I was training with some of the trainers from the state police, and, they were pretty hands off on the obedience part. It's pretty much let the dog do what he wants to do. You're just handling the lead. And then when I got into the training part of the dog, and I started really soaking in training techniques and different philosophies and operant conditioning and class. Like when I started like really doing that, everything just seemed to come together, and it was easier for me. So the question is, do you think that you're having a good time is induced by your knowledge and being able to see, those dogs during those sessions and picking out issues and working through them. And then when you go to your dogs, like you said, like I don't have those problems. I'm with you. I don't have those problems out of my dogs now. Do you think that plays a big part into your relationship with your dog? The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dog's health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey.
I think the bigger part of it is yes, but I think it's because of a level of comfort. So I think that the more you know about something, the more comfortable you are. And then you don't have I don't have these questions in my mind of, well, what if this happens? What if that, you start doubting. And so I think the dogs really feel that. I think they sense confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I think leadership is part of that. And good leaders are confident. Good leaders will make bad decisions confidently. Mm-hmm. Because you know what? We'll get through it. We'll figure it out. Like every decision isn't always right. And everything I do training isn't always right. But if I do it half-assed, I could make the right decision half-assed, and I don't think the dog will follow through with it quite as well as even if it was the wrong decision, but I did it pretty strong, Mm-hmm. So I think that the comfort part is important, and I don't think you can get comfortable with stuff until you feel it. And when I say that, I mean you can't read about it, you can't watch it, you can't observe it. It's this idea of you have to do it, because that's what happens. That's what triggers stuff in your body. So when the best example I would say that I can give you, like right now it's happening. It happens to me regularly, is working with this setter, because everything I'm doing with her, for the most part, once I got there, like I had zero concerns up until we got into the bird field with her. I don't have it. Obedience is obedience to me with a dog. Mm-hmm. I think that is, a dog is a dog in that situation. But when it comes to a bird dog versus a retriever, there's some fundamental things that we do differently. And there's some things that, some of it is mechanical, like knowing when to release a bird launcher, knowing how to set the bird launcher up properly. When I mean that, I mean like, how do you bring your dog into it? Because now you got to bring in factors like wind, and you got to bring in factors like the thickness of the cover, and all this stuff is something I've never thought about before, never had to. And so it's super simple. And when I watched a million videos about it, YouTube the hell out of it. I watched everything I could get my hands on. I read these books. I've studied more in the last couple of years than I've studied in my life, because I'm just kind of excited about this idea of taking on this pointing breed. So I really, really studied for it. It probably got me so confused in my head of, well, this one did it this way, and that one did it this way. And this one says to do this, and this one says never do that. So like you're sifting through all this information. But thankfully, I feel like I had a pretty good foundation in like dogs in general, which I could kind of look at and go, well, that's the same thing in the retriever world. Like you could have this exact same conversation and say, this guy does it this way, that guy does it that way. He says this and he says the opposite. They're both training retrievers and they both turn out. So I kind of could relate back to that and go, well, I just got to I got to pick and choose what I feel is right for me, what I feel is right for my dog. And I got a pretty good understanding of how to read a dog. And I got a pretty good understanding of what these dogs are capable, what's in them from a genetic standpoint. So I'm processing all that stuff. But all of that is in the head. None of that stuff is in your feet. None of that stuff is in your hands. Mm-hmm. So you can think about it all you want, but then you go out in the field and you know exactly how you're going to do it because you watched it enough that you know how to do it. And then you stand there and you go, you get this deer in the headlight look and you feel like, should I push the button now? Oh no. And then you're late. And then shit. And it doesn't go good. And then you fix it. And then then you got to control your emotions because then you're frustrated. Mm-hmm. Are you mad at yourself? Are you mad at the dog? It's probably a combination of both. Then you got to go through all that stuff. But I tell you what, the next time I did it, it probably wasn't perfect either, but it was a little bit better because I all of a sudden went in my head, instead of trying to remember when the guy did it on YouTube, I remember when I did it yesterday. And I remember that I missed it because of this. So I'm looking for something and I'm waiting and it could be as simple as mechanical getting my stuff organized better. You know how many times I've gone out into the field and realized I didn't take the launcher thing out of my bag? I put the little releaser button in my bag so I don't bump it. So here I'm walking out, and for the first couple times, I walk up on the dog, and I'm excited because the dog's gonna come in, and I got to be ready to pop the bird if the dog gets too close. And I got all these things through my head, and then I reach down for my releaser, and I realize I don't even have it out of my bag yet. So now I go, oh no, I got to get this out. So, but it's like something as simple as that. And there will be people that'll listen and say, how are you missing? Because I had never done it before. Mm-hmm. And if you have never done it before, it doesn't just happen. And so the comfort level, now all of a sudden I got a system. And I watched everybody's system. I watched as many people's system as I could, and then I made my own that worked best for me. And then now I got this. So now, like, I get to this point where, oh man, we do it 3, 4, 5 times in a row, and every time we get better results, almost always. I mean, it's very rarely do I not get a nice rhythm and a little bit of a cadence going, and I see improvement with the dog over a 3, 4, 5 session period. And that might be a week, might be 2 weeks, whatever it is, but you build off these sessions. And then all of a sudden I realize, man, we're pretty damn good. I get a little confident. I say, we got to add something to it. And that as soon as we take that next step, as soon as we add that next thing, it goes backwards. And I have these same feelings of, oh man, what did I do wrong? Now I'm starting to think about it. And then I do it again and I do it again. And about the 4th or 5th time after that, we got it. And then I'm on to the next. And so it's this constant feathering back and forth in my training of push myself a little bit till it's no good, work on it there for a while, get it good, push it a little bit till it's no good, work on it till it's good, move forward. It's just, but it's when I think, so back to the original question, I'm more comfortable today than I was last week with whatever it was that last week created the issue. And so now all of a sudden, I don't have to think about it as much. And if you're not thinking about stuff, then you're reacting. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a big believer in the idea of reflex, not impulse. With dogs and myself. So I want to do something enough times and fumble it enough times to learn from it. And then once I do it enough times and it goes smoothly, I don't have to think about it anymore. And if I don't have to think about it anymore, I'm able to focus on the stuff that I need to focus on, which is really back to the idea of like reading the situation and responding to it accordingly. And when you get good at that, man, it's amazing what can happen. But that sounds really hunky-dory. I mean, it sounds real nice, but what does it all take? Time. Mm-hmm. And it takes work. And I feel like that's the part that is actually, I love that part. And I talk to so many people that all they want to do is speed this up. Mm. You could do this so much faster if you did it this way.
Do you like to be outside like I do? Hunting, fishing, hiking? If so, onX is the app for you. I've been a loyal onX user for years. It's the one app that I can honestly say I use daily. While hunting, I know where I'm at all times. I mark trails, bedding areas, feeding areas, and the list goes on. In my travels, I use it to pre-scout all the new places that I am blessed to hunt. Last year while hiking Yellowstone, I used OnX to map out the trails and know the difficulty of each one. And here's a secret. I mark all of my favorite fishing spots on OnX. It's been a game changer for me at work. I've used it multiple times to get in touch with property owners. OnX has so many great features and tools, you can literally use it in your everyday life. It is by far the best mapping app on the market. And hey, it's approved by yours truly at Houndsman XP. So when you go to subscribe to OnX, use our code HXP20 and get you a discount. So get your journey started with OnX and know where you stand.
I don't want to do it faster. I like this, so it's, to me, it's this idea of, I do think there's a balance of efficiency. You got to be efficient. You don't want to make mistakes that don't help the momentum in the big picture. But I also think we have to stay focused on the idea that this is not a sprint. Mm-hmm. Never have I sprinted and it went well with the dog. It's a marathon. It's a marathon mentality, and that is and I'm not a runner. You can see I'm not a runner, but I have run in the past, and just for to try to be a little bit healthier, and it was the best thing for me because it made me think about things differently, and I can relate that, I think, to the progress of starting with a young dog or a puppy and working it through however long it is I'm working with it.
And that leads me to tap into something else. So, recent podcast you had done, you had talked about, I think you had set up a booth at some type of show or outing, and some people come over and was talking to you, and you said that they kind of had that, that deer in the headlight look. Talk about that a little bit and what your advice was to them, because, again, I don't think I think it's in all dog worlds, is people want it done at 6 months. And that's a part of the whole podcast is the journey, because it is a journey. It is the big picture. I'm working on the end result. I'm not working on the first month of this dog's career. I'm working on the whole process. Talk about that a little bit and what you told them, because it really resonated with me, and it's so reassuring to hear people that have the same mindset, which is what you're just regurgitating right there.
Yeah. No, I did a show. It was the Wisconsin Waterfowl Expo, and we do it every year. This is the third year of the show, and we've been really grateful that they've invited us to be a part of it. We're going to do seminars there next month, actually, in August. And so I was at this Wisconsin Waterfowl Expo that happens in late August, and our teal season opens on September 1st here. So we have an early teal season. So everyone's kind of jacked up at this Waterfowl Expo because the following week is teal is going to open, and then you're a month away from the opener of the actual duck season. So I did a demonstration, a seminar demonstration where I had some dogs outside and we worked them. And I had a dog in the booth. All the dogs were in the booth with us, and I forget how old she was. She was over a year. I mean, she was probably 14 months maybe. And it was a dog that I had only gotten. I got her from a client of mine, and I think he brought her to me when she was about 9 months old. So I hadn't had her that long. And the people came up, and it was a really common question, and you could see the tension almost. I went outside and I did a seminar, worked the dogs, brought the dogs back in, and people come to the booth with questions. And so their question to me was, they just watched this dog she was, I don't know, 14 months old roughly. And I said, well, they asked me something about her first season, because this would be her first season. And they were asking me about getting, what did you have to have? What do you feel like you had to have ready with her to get her to hunt be ready for hunting next week? And was confused. And I said, what do you mean? And they pointed at the dog, Callie, and they said, what is the stuff you feel like you have to have before you can take her out into the field for hunting? And I said, well, she won't hunt this year. And I said, she's not ready. And instantly they looked at me with relief. And I said, well, why, we got a ways to go. You saw her outside, and she's a pretty nice dog. Could she go into a field and hunt? Yeah, probably, but she wasn't quite ready, I didn't think. And I just wasn't comfortable with it. So I said to them, why do you ask that? And they started telling me about their dog. They had like a 10-month-old dog. They were so concerned about making sure they had all the stuff that they had to have to get it in the field, like in a week or two. And I said, boy, at 10 months, I'd take a deep breath, man. You got a year. Like, where's the fire? And they said, well, we've heard people say, get them in the field, give them experience. I said, what's the benefit? What are you going to gain from it? You might pick something up, but there's a lot of risk there too. And for me personally, if you're training the dog yourself, nobody can tell you when you have to do anything with them. And that's the beauty of it. And so I understand, like, we get wrapped around this idea of timelines when it comes to dog training, I think, because especially when it comes to professional trainers, and this is not a dig or a knock or anything on professional trainers, because I don't know how they couldn't do this. They have to measure stuff by time, and they charge by time, and they perform based on time, and they're selected because of the window or duration that they say they'll be able to get certain things done. So I get all that. But the beauty of me training my own dog, and the nice part about anybody that listens to this that's training their own dog, is you don't have any of that pressure. You don't have any of that. There is nobody that should tell you have to do certain things with certain dogs by certain ages, because and a lot of times I'll ask people, why do you say that? Why do you think that? Well, because look at any professional trainer, they're going to tell you got to have it done in this window. Well, yeah, to fit into their schedule, to fit it into, for them to be able to do business the way they do business, they have to do that. You don't. And as soon as people realize that, it's a very different look at how you're training. And that person that was pretty concerned about it completely had this, like, visually, I could see him settle a little bit and be like, I'm so much more comfortable. Well, guess who's going to be better off working with their dog when they go home now? Guess whose dog is going to feel a little bit better about the next session, because dad's not so tense about what do I have to get done by next week so I can take you teal hunting. No, you take it. There's this thing, a good friend of mine, the guy that I bred these puppies with, the guy that was in England, his name is Noah, and he's got some. I've learned a lot from him. And one of his sayings that he picked up, which is how things happen. You come across stuff, you pick it up, what sticks, and you move on from the stuff that doesn't. Well, his thing to me was take what they give you. Take what the puppy gives you. So if the dog tells me she's ready or he's ready to move on a little bit, we do it. They'll just as quickly tell you you've gone too far, you've gone too fast. So you got to take what they give you. And if my mindset going into training a dog is I'm going to wait a season, I had someone, I just recently on social media, on Instagram, I had a guy really go off on me about it. I forget what the post was, but it was, I know what the post was. I said something about, I don't use training collars. I don't use shock collars. Mm-hmm. So I had this post that said, I don't use a shock collar. I also don't treat train. And then I went in on, like, this is what works for me. I don't have a problem with anybody else doing it. Do what works for you, blah, 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 blah. That was the post. And I had a guy come kind of unglued a little bit with this comment. And I thought, Jesus, man, I don't think you read the post. Because I don't think he got past the first line of, I don't use a shock collar. Because he went off on this idea of, you're standing on your soapbox about not using collars and blah, 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 and time matters. And you always say to tell people that time doesn't matter. And on and on and on about this. And he said something about, if, a dog's life is only so long and I'm not going to sacrifice that. No problem. Do whatever you want to do. Like, I am not here to tell him how to do anything. I couldn't. I almost had. I responded. I said, "Man, I think you got to reread my post because what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying." So, but anyway, what I thought was interesting about it was, I'd hate to live my life feeling like time is so limited that I have to hunt this puppy at 10 months old or whatever the age is, because that's the only way I'm going to get the most out of it. Because my feeling is, and this is, maybe it's a philosophy on life, but I look at it as, I'm going to have the dog for hopefully 15 years. I don't know, 10 to 15 years, more than likely. So I would rather have, if I don't hunt the dog till it's 2, let's say, I'd rather have 8 really good years of hunting than have 9 years of hunting that are mediocre at best, because I made sure I got that extra year of hunting. And there, I'll be honest, those first parts of these puppies' lives, you can put stuff in there that isn't going to leave. Like, you can do it intentionally and you can do it accidentally. And you want to make sure that the stuff you're putting in there that isn't going to leave, it's going to be with them forever, it's in their makeup, is all the good stuff. And you want to make sure that you avoid all the stuff that you don't want to have, because it's in there. And you can't, some of that stuff you just can't erase. And so I look at it as the risk versus what I'm going to gain out of that extra season. I mean, quite honest, let's be honest. What are you going to get out of hunting a 7, 8, 9-month-old puppy? It's for you. It's not for the puppy. It's for you. And so I'm willing to sacrifice that. And I do have the luxury of having other dogs, and there's all this other stuff, but I don't care if it's my first dog. I'm going to recommend to anybody, I'd rather see you wait. And we get excited about hunting, and I think we should. That's what they're for. That's what the dogs are for. But I also think that we got to look at this as, we work so hard to prepare them for it. Training is like, it's not, I don't like the word training. I would prefer the word raising. Like, it's you start with this little thing and you shape it and you mold it for 10 years, really. It never ends. And so you have that time when they're little, and we always love that. And we love that time when the dog's got the bird in its mouth, or the dog picked the shed up for you, or the dog found the deer for you, or whatever it is you're doing at the end. We love that too. Don't lose sight of all the stuff in the middle, because it's really good. And you got to transition, because you can't get from A to Z. There's all these letters in between, and you can't skip them. And you shouldn't skip them. And once you realize those letters in between are just as fun or better, now you're back to enjoying training again. And guess what? Your results are going to be better.
I use that analogy all the time. That's so funny that you say that we get so ahead of ourselves that we skip some of the letters, and then we end up going back and trying to clean up, which leads to the other thing that you said in that podcast is, if you let things go and don't mess it up, then you don't have to go back and fix it.
Yeah, makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Don't break stuff in the first place. Like,
right.
I'm a big believer in the idea of, I don't try to treat symptoms. I avoid the illness. And it's easy to say, I know, but if you simplify it and you recognize that training isn't the 10-minute session or the 15-minute session exclusively, that's where I think that's why wording is so important. Semantics are important. I don't use breaking a dog. I don't break dogs. I don't do any of that stuff. I feel like just the word alone changes the attitude of the action, and it goes the wrong way. So I look at it when it comes to training a dog. We all know what that means, because dog training 101, Google it, like the word training dogs. Dog and training is going to be synonymous. They're tied together forever and ever and ever. Always will be. But what about kids? I've never seen a book on training your kid. But how many times have people written books that talk about raising a responsible kid? What are we doing? We're raising them. And so But what does that do? What does that do is it changes my mindset into realizing that training to me is very easy. It's very clear. It's a set aside time to go work on a specific thing. And if that's how we get our dog to be the way we want it, we're going to have small pieces of the puzzle good. And then we're going to have a bunch of other stuff that probably isn't so good. And I prefer to look at it as dogs always learn, we always train. And so what does that mean? Take the word training out completely and change it with raising. And now all of a sudden I look at it and I go, I'm raising my kids all the time. I'm raising my dog all the time. And now my mindset changes to, right now I've got a dog laying next to me. It's a puppy out of our breeding. He's like 2 years old. It's my son's dog. And so that dog right now is laying on his bed quietly, and he's in training. If I allowed him to run around and get into stuff while I'm trying to do this, if I had done that when he was a puppy, if I'd have let that happen when he was a puppy, he'd be doing that right now as a 2-year-old. And so when he was a puppy, we put him on place and we taught him, you got a spot here that you can stay. You can do anything you want here. And very quickly he realized it's pretty comfortable, and I will probably lay down and sleep here. Guess what he's been doing the entire time? He's laying there and sleeping. Habits start somewhere. And so what I like to do is make sure the desirable habits start first, and don't allow the undesirable ones to even show up. And then I don't have to train it out and retrain something in. But that's a mindset thing. And when as soon as you do it, you realize, boy, it makes it just makes the whole big picture a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, the hands-on part is huge. And I'm like you, and I feel like I'm very fortunate that I've got some of the education and knowledge that I have, which, you and I talked about it when we started, is everything that I know I've learned from reading a book or somebody else. None of this stuff is mine. I've tweaked it, and I've taken this piece and put that piece together to make it mine, just like what you just said. But somebody had asked me a question about, pups being food aggressive, because that's a thing in the hound world. I don't know if you guys fool with it as much as we do. I don't allow it to start.
Right.
Like, I stop it as soon as I see it. It's done. And 2 or 3 times of correcting that behavior or that disposition, you don't have it anymore. But I do it when they're puppies. But I enjoy raising puppies. That's like, I enjoy that first year life, like what you said. Yeah. That's my favorite part of it. Of course, I like the finished product, but it's taking a different method or taking a different approach to them, and not letting them do, like, you're just reiterating stuff that we talk about and how important it is, in our world, the dog world. So,
yeah, they're utilitarian. They're things that we use, but I also think that it can't be just looked at that way. And that's where, like, you've got kids, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
How many kids you have?
4.
I've got 3. As soon as we became parents, everything changed. Like, purpose. My purpose changed. Like, my kids are my life, right? Well, there's a lot of people that don't have kids and have dogs. And I think you got to be careful too, because they're not humans. Like, we can't confuse this with that they're humans. But there's a lot of similarities in the process of how you and I have raised kids and how we raise dogs, and found success or struggles. Because I've done things with my kids too that I had to change how I was doing it because it wasn't working. And so I've run into things that I've done with my dogs that I had to change because it wasn't working. And then it even more. Well, no two are the same. So
that's right.
Now you got to make, but those are all fine-tuned adjustments that you make as you go. But I don't think that the general direction, the 10,000 foot view of it, it's pretty similar. And you're talking hounds, and I'm talking bird dogs, and then I'm talking shed dogs, and then I'm talking tracking dogs, and then I'm talking, doesn't matter. the general direction is pretty similar.
Yep.
And then you get into the details, and then you start fine tuning stuff.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the last segment you were talking about. Is you're not in a rush, and I've got a pup. The pup that I was just talking to, I picked out because I like the way she looked. She's 6 months old. Our season comes in next week. I guarantee you that when I put her in, if I put her in the woods right now, she's going. She's going. I mean, she's ready, but mentally, she's not. I can't take a chance on her running up on a bear on the ground and getting hurt or getting damaged, whatever you want to call it, by a bear on the ground, and then setting her back because mentally she's not prepared. And as bad as I want, because I mean I love the little dog, as bad as I want to, I'm not doing it.
Sure.
And and that's the same thing you're saying. I'm not in a rut. Like I want her to be that outstanding dog at 6 and 8 years old. Well, but that's my end goal. It's not to get her destroyed at 6 months old, and then I'm starting all over with something else that I may not like as well as I like her.
Yeah, and she'll tell you when she's ready, right? Like I feel like that's the thing with these dogs. That's been the really interesting thing for me with my little setter is I really feel like the progress, because I've never done it before. So is the process or the progress or the timeline that we're doing things right? I don't know. Is it wrong? I don't know. But I think what I have found is that I've relied pretty heavily on her to tell me when she's ready. And I've also had to listen to her when she told me you're going too fast or you're going too far. And that might conflict with what Delmar Smith's book said. Mm-hmm. It might conflict with what Bob Whaley said in his book. It might be right on with what they said. And so the hard part about, and there's what I'm, those are two guys that I've read a lot about and studied a lot about and know more and absolutely have all the credentials to be worth following and trying to emulate. But at the same time, I think I realize it, and I think folks have to realize it. When they wrote that book, they're limited to writing about, because I write some stuff, and writing's really hard. I'm not a good. My English teacher she wouldn't believe that I wrote something that got published, because I mean, if I was a low C student, that's probably being pretty generous. When I write, it's very hard for me. It's challenging. It's part of why I do it, because I actually feel like it's making me think about stuff different. It's pushing me to do things that are very uncomfortable. And so, but when I write about stuff, it's one of the hardest parts about it for me personally is I can't explain it as broadly as I would like to, because you just don't have space. Mm-hmm. It's a different media. And so I'm delicate about selection of words to try to make sure I get as close to what I want to say out in writing. But like in a podcast like this, it's easier because we can really talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I could write, Bob Whaley book and Delmar's book. You don't do it exactly like that. And people would be like, oh, he doesn't think those guys are worth. No, that's not it. They got a ton of shit, but they wrote books, and that was the way to do it back then. And they wrote about generalities mm-hmm. of dogs. And then once you get into dogs, you'll realize, well, there's some play there, and there's some variance there. And the dogs, the once you figure out how that looks and how that transfers to the training, then you start to recognize you got to listen to the dog at times too. And the dog's going to tell you a lot if you understand how to and are willing to listen. But then there's also the mindset of, well, the dog conforms to the way I train. There's that school of thought too. It's a different way of doing it. I can't help people that want to do it that way because that's not how I do it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that I'm also saying the dog doesn't tell me everything. I'm not going to go on. I talk about this in a lot of podcasts where there's extremes. There's one end of the spectrum, and then there's the other. I never want to be on either one of them. I'm always looking to try to get in the middle. And I feel like that allows me to have flexibility, because that's what I need when I'm working with a dog. I need to be able to go one direction or the other, and it might vary day to day. It might vary dog to dog. It might vary session to session, depending on what they give me. And that's where this idea of take what they give you. Whatever they give me, how do I respond? How do I go back with it? And then they'll give me something back, and I'll give them something. And it's a really beautiful thing when it all lines up, because you just feel like, man, what you just got done. And I think that transfers to the dogs too. I think they feel it. You can see when a dog is really proud. Mm-hmm. They've done it right. You know they did it right. But all that stuff, you back up and you go, well, how did we get that feeling? And there's a lot of parts and pieces that went into it. You set them up properly. You did the right things at the right time. And so all these things get together, and then it's like, I'm not musical at all. I like music. I love music, but I'm not musical. But when you hear this stuff go right musically, it's like art. It's art. Mm-hmm. You could say painting. I'm none of that stuff. But I got a very fine appreciation for it, because when it goes good, man, I love it. And that's the same, I think, when it comes to working with these dogs.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, it's taught me a lesson, and looking over my career with dogs, I want to smack myself sometimes, because I've had some really good dogs that I was impatient with, that I pushed too hard, or I've done something too fast. And I've ruined a lot of dogs through my career, and that's something I'm trying never to do again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a process, and I mean, everything you say resonates, because that's the way I think. Like, I'm on the same page with the way that I feel about training, and I talk to my guys about it all the time. I talk to them about, we're not in a hurry. We'll work on this here and there for the next 3 months, and then we'll move on to something else. Well, I need it done next week. Well, why do you need it done next week? Because you want it done next week.
Right. Right.
So no,
that's hard. That's hard for a lot of trainers. I think it's hard and not just professional trainers. I mean, it's hard for people, but I think part of that comes that are training their own dogs. I think part of that comes from what they see. There's a keeping up with the Jones types feel out there, that you saw this guy's doing this at this age. I should be doing that too. Maybe not, and I also think you got to keep in mind too, that the stuff that people see, I love social media. We would have never met if there wasn't for social media. Right. I love social media. And I hear, how many people I hear talk about how they hate social media and they can't stand it and they have to be on it and blah, blah. Then don't be on it, because if you don't like it, you're maybe not using it right. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like it's one of the greatest tools out there, but I also recognize that it's just like watching the news. I don't watch the news, but if you do watch the news, you'll be really depressed pretty quick. So, but if you can pick and choose the stuff that makes sense and sift, you gotta have a filter a little bit and be able to wade your way through it. But I think you have to keep in mind that very few people are 100% transparent with what they share, and rightfully so. I'm not saying everyone should show their bad stuff. I try to show everything, so the best I can, and the reason is because I feel like it's relatable. It's the stuff I wish I could see. It's the stuff I want to find out happens, because if all you do is show highlight reel stuff, that's human nature. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with it. Go for it. But recognize if you're having a hard time dealing with seeing everybody else show highlight reel stuff, just remind yourself, and at some point you got to believe it. You know what? They have off times too. They're just not showing it. Their dog's not doing everything the way I see it right now. Pick up the stuff that you can get positive out of watching that stuff, and discard the rest. But that's hard. That is really hard to do. And I get sucked into it myself at times. But one thing that we just won't do between me and I work with really great guys. That our team is really good, and they and I are both on the same page of like, okay, we as we document stuff, we share it with honesty. And there's a gal that follows us from over in the UK, and she said something about it because I posted something about my setter that she didn't look very good. And so we posted this session, and it was a frustrating one. It was one of those sessions that we took another step. Mm-hmm. We did something new, and I threw a curveball at her, and she missed it. And so I got to look at that and go, well, some of the best sessions are the ones that go poorly. The ones that look good and feel good are for me and make me feel good. But the best sessions, the most productive sessions, are the ones that don't go so well. And I have the common sense and the ability to take a step back from it to learn. As long as I learn from it and do it differently the next time, those are the best sessions. They don't always look the best, but they are the best from a value standpoint. And so that was kind of the point of that post. And the comment she made was something about your honesty. That's what has completely drawn me to what you're doing is your honesty. And I said, honesty is the best policy. We learned that shit when we were kids. So that's one thing that me and the guys have all decided is, you can do a lot of stuff with editing. You can make it worse. I did that once. I had a bad hunt with the dogs. I set them up to fail and they failed. And we filmed it all. It was a duck hunt. And then I said at the end of it, it was so poor. I was like, I don't even know if I want to show this. And they looked at me and I said, yeah, I know, we got to show it. But here's what I want to do. And this was on our YouTube channel. I said, here's what I want to do. Let's use this. Ben, you edit it to make it look good. Edit it and cut out all the bad stuff, put all the good stuff, make this hunt look like it went awesome, banger, real nice. We shot a bunch of birds and the dog worked well. Then I want you to edit it the way it really happened. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to put those two videos together and we're going to play them. And so I made a point of in the beginning of the video, I made it really clear, hey, watch the whole video because you're going to see two different hunts. They're the exact same hunt, but you're going to see two different hunts based on how we decided to show it to you. And my point with it was, this is the stuff that can happen. Deal with it. And then we built off of that, and it took the dog back to the same spot. We hunted in that spot, and she did well. And so I think that's stuff that I have a hard time finding some of that stuff. I wish I could find more of it because I'd learn a lot more that way.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap this up, what would be some advice on I know you've dived pretty deep into some things that are very close to me. What kind of advice would you give us on, just training or raising? I'm going to start using that word. I like the terminology on, raising dogs or in general with dogs. It's going to make us better.
I think there's two sides of it. I think there's the mechanical part. If you don't understand how to work the dog, like the physical parts of it, there's timing is so important. I just think that's one of the hardest things for people to get when they get started. And then as you get older, as you get more experience, I think your timing gets better and better and better until it's back to that idea of reflex where it just happens. And then your mind is not thinking about it. Your body's responding to it. And so that's part of it, but that you have to do it. You can't be afraid. I think sometimes we overanalyze stuff and we kind of are paralyzed because of it. And I've been that way too, especially with new things. But so that's part of it. But then the other part is I think you got to start to think about, well, here's the easiest thing for everybody, because I'll go down another rabbit hole with this thing. But here's the biggest thing that I would recommend. And some people are going to, some people will, this will really help. And some people will put their nose up to it and shake their head and go, this guy, slow down. Slow everything down. And when I say slow down, I mean all of it, not like your progress, that too, but like your movement, everything you do, slow down. And so, because what I feel like what we struggle with, and I do too, is, our society and the things that we do is we fit a lot of stuff into 24 hours. We always do. And that's an efficiency game, and it's a productivity thing, and it's a profitability thing, and it's connected to everything in our lives. We really try to get stuff done quickly. And I'm all for it with everything that doesn't have to do with dogs for the most part, except golf. Like I think people golf way too fast. Slow the hell down. I'm here to enjoy the thing, right? So I look at golfing like training my dogs. I'm not in a rush to get it done. Where so many people go and figure out how to play quickly to get done. Well, why are you playing? So to me, like, physically slow down. Because I think what ends up happening is for me, a lot of people struggle with their dogs because can't get them to focus. They have a hard time getting them. I think they need to be with you up here in your head. Like, people that are listening to this won't be able to see this. I'm pointing at my brain. Like, you need their head in order to have their feet. And ultimately, they move through their feet. So I'm trying to own their feet. I want them to move their feet the way I want them to move their feet and when I want them to move them. And in order to do that, I got to have their head. And a lot of it goes to their eyes. Like, I like this idea of get their eyes, get them looking to you. Because what do? You look to your leaders. When you need answers, who do you look to? Well, both physically and figuratively, I suppose. I want these dogs to look at me. And how do you get them to do that? Because next time you take your dog out, pay attention to your pace. Like, if you take them out of a crate or a kennel or call them off a bed or whatever it is, and you're going to go work with them, you're going to go do a session, notice your pace and watch what happens. The dog is going to ramp up. Most of them get excited. This is a fun thing. This should be a good thing. I want that. But when they ramp up to the point of, I see so many people work their dogs at such a high level of, it's almost anxiety.
Spastic.
And guess how focused they are at that point? They're going off of instincts. Mm-hmm. And it's what a lot of the things that I'm trying to teach them, I don't teach the dogs the things that they do inherently. I think we got to get that out of our heads. I don't teach retrievers to retrieve. I don't teach pointing dogs to point. You don't treat hounds to track. Mm-hmm. They do it. It's in them. You better get out of the way of the stuff that they do best. We're not going to help. We're going to get in the way of stuff like that. So, but what does the stuff that they don't do naturally that we want them to do? That's not instinct. That requires an understanding of discipline and a willingness to be cooperative. And in order to do that, they have to think about it. And then it has to transfer down to their feet. And so I think that when you get the dog out, you're going to see the spike, because nine times out of 10, maybe more than that, when people get their dogs out, they just get them out in the field and go do stuff. And then they can't understand why the dog has to, you know how many people tell me they got to run their dog to get the energy out, and then they can, you just opened up shook a pop bottle up, mm-hmm. Open it up, let it spray all over. And now you're wondering why there's no pop left in the bottle to train. Well, because you just let it explode. So instead, I'm going to take the dog. Every time I'm going to take the dog, I'm going to bring the dog out. And if you tell yourself, slow down, and then you do it, slow down, just slow down. And your first couple sessions, you might not even make it outside. Mm-hmm. You might get to the point where you maybe get to the door, and then all of a sudden, you get to the point where you go, okay, the dog is still with me mentally. Let's go outside. And it might take a while to get to the point where you can actually get to the point where you're going to do something and start moving forward in the actual training. But try it. But you know what's hard? The hard part will be is the people themselves are going to go, I can't wait. I can't do this. I got to get going. Well, then why do you think your dog's that way? Mm-hmm. If you can't do it, your dog won't be able to do it. That's a challenge. That's a tough challenge. That's a tough thing to do. But my buddy there, Noah, who I like working dogs with them and stuff. we laughed the other day. This is a month ago. We were down in Kansas. That's where he's from. We were training dogs, and we worked a pair. He had a brace of dogs. I had a brace of dogs, and we worked them together. And I don't know. We worked for an hour and a half together, and I think our dogs made 4 or 5 retrieves each, and for over an hour and a half. And most people that I know that are training their retrievers are going to have a dozen retrieves in the first 10 minutes. I mean, we just take a little bit different approach to how we're working. And what it ends up doing is it helps us get these dogs to start to slow down their thinking, slow down their feet, slow down everything. And then all of a sudden I can get precise. Like then I can really start to ask them to do some things that aren't so natural to them. And they'll work, and it go, and a lot of it's the genetic ability to be cooperative. I like that. That's why it's on my list of things. Biddability is one of the things I really look for in a dog. But I got long-winded on it, but I'd say slow down. Mm-hmm. Slow everything down. Try it and see if you like it. Because I got a feeling it'll actually make you feel. I think what you can do is start with your dog, and then if you see what I think you'll probably see is you see some better results. Try it next time you go golfing. Try it next time you go fishing. Try it next time you go take your kid to the park. Try it with everything that you can get away with it, because I think you'll enjoy it a lot more. It isn't always the best to get the most done. Less is sometimes more, and I think with the dogs, I think my buddy told me, and I'm beating the hell out of this saying. He told one of the dogs that I trained recently, I did very little with, and I was explaining it to him. I said, "Man, I haven't done much with them, but everything we've done really well." And the dog, I mean, it was one of my favorite dogs in 20 years. And he said, "Yeah, don't do more, do less, better."
That's right.
That's all you did with that dog is you just didn't do a lot, but everything you did really well. And I said, I need to do that with every dog. Don't do more, do less, better.
I like it.
And slow down.
I like it. Yeah. And that's something I learned from the Dutch guys is they told me that the dog works better in a calm mind. And if I'm not in a calm mind, the dog's not in a calm mind. So absolutely, Jeremy, I mean, you have, really resonated a lot of things today. I like the analogies. I'm going to change my vocabulary a little bit because of this. Yeah. I like the part of raising. Training are just segments, and that's exactly right. It's a 5-minute segment here. It's a 20-minute here. That's not all we do with the dog, so I like it. Yeah,
it's a mindset thing. As soon as you change your mindset, it just becomes normal.
Yeah,
and it'll be a little bit for some of the people that are listening. It'll be awkward to start out. It'll be a hard. There's a little uncomfortableness with it, and trust me, that's good. Like. I try to put myself in some positions to be a little uncomfortable at times, and then figure out how to get it. And then once you get it, it just becomes kind of normal. And as long as they're the right things, you're pushing yourself down the kind of the right road. And that's all I'm trying to do is just improve. I have so much, Heath, I have so much to learn and so much more stuff that the more I dig into, I realize just how little I know.
Well, and when you're uncomfortable, that's when the growth process takes place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on here, and we didn't even get into the shed. Maybe we'll come back and approach that some other time. 'Cause I really want to learn that process because as my retirement is getting closer, that's something that I've kind of got. I don't say it's a bucket list, but it's a thing that I'm very interested in, and taking a dog and training it for that. So that's on my to-do list. So I maybe we can come back and revisit that if you'll do that.
For sure. It's a whole other can of worms, man. I'd love to do it.
Yeah. So
cool.
Thank you so much for spending the time with us today, and thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.